So first of all, right, we have been doing these sparring sessions, I think, live for a long time now. Now, in the past 6 months, I think we are restarting the sparring session after 6 months now. We had been doing Cram sessions before that, and we've been doing live Q&A before that, right? So just to give you an idea on what these sessions are, we do live session Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. For 4 days a week, we do live sessions. Mondays, we do it for FAR. Tuesdays, we do it for Audit. Wednesdays, we do it for Reg. And Thursdays, we do it for BEC. Now, in these sessions, we do sparring sessions. Now, sparring sessions are topical sessions. We cover a topic in these sessions, topical sessions. We deep dive into a topic, right? Understand the topic conceptually to all the points required. Understand the topic conceptually. And practice MCQs. So for example, the agenda we have for today's session is AICPA Code of Professional Conduct. In the next 1.5 hours, probably we'll discuss, right, all the principles, the rules regarding integrity and objectivity, the rules regarding independence, and all of that in today's session. So we are discussing professional responsibilities as a topic today. And we are discussing AICPA Code of Professional Conduct as a part of the discussion, right? Now, in these topics, right, in these sessions, we have already done it like in 2022. And if you go under the videos tab, you can find all the previous replays. So all the previous sparring replays are right here. Now, we will start with the AICPA Code of Conduct today and will complete all the audit topics in the next 7 to 8 months, probably like around 8 months for us to complete all the topics. So do you wait for 8 months to write your exams? No. You don't schedule your exams around these sessions, right? Because all the previous replays are updated. Think about it. If we do around 40 sessions, right, or 50 sessions, that is basically 1 week a session that will take us a year to complete all the audit sparring sessions. So you don't need to wait for all the sessions to be completed. These videos are completely updated. They're updated for the current exams. So for example, if there is a change that comes in, we first update those videos to make sure these videos are updated for the exams being taken. So let's just say in the middle of January, if they come up with an update for audit report for issuers, these sessions will go on. But in the background, we'll update these videos to make sure they're applicable for the current exams. So yes, these videos are always updated. These videos are always applicable for the current exams. So the way you can use these sessions is, let's just say you're planning to take your exams in January. So probably what I'll decide is that these two topics, I'll do it live, right? And the other topics, I'll watch the videos. That's the idea. Now, all the replays are posted right here. Once we do these sessions, what we'll do is we'll replace the old video with the new one here. So let's just say last time we had done AICPA Code of Professional Conduct. This time we have broken it down into 2 sessions. Now, the reason we have broken it down into 2 sessions, it's not because that we are covering extra content or anything. Of course, first of all, we'll be practicing more MCQs. So we'll be doing around 30 MCQs on AICPA Code of Professional Conduct Part 1 itself. So we do 2 sessions. So in the next 2 sessions of AICPA Code of Professional Conduct, almost all the MCQs would have been done live itself, right? So that's how we approach it. So the videos will be updated here. Now we also do Cram sessions, which we finished, I think, somewhere in September for 2022, right? So if you see, all the Cram sessions are right here. Now, Cram sessions are a quick overview. Probably in 15 hours, you can walk through the entire audit curriculum. That's the Cram session which we have here. In this, we also do AICPA released questions, Q&A, right? AICPA released AICPA sample test. And the videos are already here. And we sometimes just practice MCQs and SIMs, and those MCQs and SIMs videos are pasted here, are right here. So you could use all of these resources. Now we finished Cram, right? We did sparring sessions in 2021, which we finished in 2022. We did Cram sessions, right? We also did the AICPA, all of this is done. We are restarting. So the videos here are completely applicable. But in these live sessions, we'll be redoing the topical sessions And once we do these sessions, we'll upload the old videos, we'll replace the old videos with the new ones. That's what these sessions are about. Yes, these sessions are recorded, and that's why, so even if you miss the live session or if you can't attend all of the session, just come back and check for the topic the next day. It's not something which is in order, but you can check for the topic. So if you're doing AICPA Code of Professional Conduct, it would be within professional responsibilities. We are doing this today. It'll be within professional responsibilities, and the first video would be there. Are we clear with this? Any questions you have before we start with the audit sparring sessions again? Now, we'll start with the audit sparring sessions now. Now, one of the things about audit, right? It's completely theoretical. It's the only theoretical topic, like it's fully theoretical. Let's just say, if you talk about PAR, it's completely number-based. If you talk about reg, it's mostly number-based, but it has got some theory as well. If I talk about BC, again, it's number-based and theory mix. Whereas audit is completely theoretical. Now that presents one challenge, and I want to make sure at the onset of these sessions that I make you aware of that challenge and how to tackle that challenge as well. Now, when you get a number-based MCQ in the exam, right, what happens is you would calculate, arrive at the answer, and then choose the answer from the given number of options given. So let's just say if you have to ask to calculate depreciation, you would calculate depreciation in FAR. Let's just say you arrive at 12,000, you know the answer, now you're selecting the answer. You're selecting the answer. But in audit, what happens is the options are given to you. You will read all the options because it's completely theoretical, and you will choose the correct answer amongst those options. Now try to understand what happens here and how that can create a challenge in the exams and how that can lead you to lose some marks if you're not 100% conceptually clear. Now in FAR, you arrive at the number and then you select the number from the options given. So you already know the answer before you read the options. Where is it? So you're not using the options to come at the answer. So the options given cannot confuse you. Try to think about it. In any number-based topic, number-based question, where you have to basically calculate a number as an answer, right? You calculate your answer and choose your answer or select the answer in the options given. You don't use the options to figure out the answer. So wrong answers or wrong options can't confuse you. That's what happens. But in a theoretical topic question, right? You will choose the option, choose the answer from the options given. So a wrong option can confuse you. Now this problem becomes even more in audit. Why? Because audit is the only topic which is completely theoretical. So a wrong option's tendency to confuse you and make you select a wrong option as the correct answer is higher. Now the only way you tackle it is make sure you're 100% conceptually clear. 100% conceptually clear with the topic which we are discussing. Very, very important. That you know each and every concept related to that. It's not a mechanical understanding. And that's why you would hear so many people who would not clear audit. The reason is they felt prepared. They understood the topic on a surface level, but not conceptually. You need to be able to understand how the audit as a process would work. You should be able to understand that, okay, hey, if you are thrown into the audit office, you will at least know how to navigate the steps. So just a surface level understanding is not enough. You need to be 100% conceptually clear. I'm not sure at what stage of preparation you currently are at individually, but yeah, regardless of what stage you are at, specifically if you're starting, make sure you again take this commitment that when we study audit, it's not just at a mechanical level of understanding. We would try to understand each and every concept related to it. We'll make sure we understand it deeply and only then we'll move forward. That's the number one tip you need to have in audit. Now, the second thing is, right, if you have listened to any of the sparring sessions, right, for the other sections, be it FAR, BC, or Reg, right, I'm not very fussy about what order you go in, right? Let's just say FAR, somebody says, I want to start with governmental accounting. I'm saying, go ahead. If somebody says, I want to start with leases, go ahead. If somebody says, I want to start with income taxes, go ahead, start with the topic. Even with BC, these are separate subjects altogether. You could do cost accounting first and then financial management, then IT, or just change up the order. In Reg as well, you can do business law first, or you can do, let's say, the tax part. Even in business law, let's just say you want to do bankruptcy first, no problem. Audit is one of those topics where you must maintain the order. And this is the order of preparation I want, right? You would go through the topics in this order itself. Because this audit is a process. This entire audit is one connected process, right? Every organization every audit firm who's doing an audit is going through the same cycle. So it's very important that, and all these steps are constructive. The results of steps of internal control testing decide how substantive procedures would be applied. The result of substantive procedures tell you, again, what opinion should be and how the report would look like, right? And again, how do you decide how much controls to do? That is dependent upon engagement, acceptance, and planning. So we need to follow this order of preparation. So in audit, first we discuss professional responsibilities. Now, what is professional responsibilities? This tells you what are the rules and regulations you must comply with as an auditor performing an audit engagement or any other engagement. Then we'll talk about engagement acceptance. That, okay, hey, before you take on an engagement, what are the steps and activities you need to do? Then we talk about audit planning. How do you plan an engagement? Before you perform the engagement, how do you plan it? Then we'll talk about internal controls and internal control testing. You will do the test of internal controls then. After that, once you've done the test of controls, you will do the substantive audit procedures, which include substantive analytical procedures and all these other procedures. Based on that, right, we'll have the audit reports come out. Now, again, all these procedures are done on a sampling basis, So we'll discuss sampling after that. And of course, we can use audit data analytics in evaluating this sample results, Now, based on that, we form our opinion and give our audit reports. So it's very important we maintain that order. And that's why in audit, right, every time I do a sparring session or a cram session, we always follow the same order of preparation. It doesn't make sense that you start with the reports first and then go on to the other parts. So it's important that you follow this order. This is the order of preparation we would go in. Now, this order also makes sense for the second reason. Now, if you see, internal control and substantive procedures are the most conceptual. These are, again, everything is theoretical, but very conceptual. Your understanding needs to be proper. So this is something which you don't need to memorize as such, but you need to understand it really well to answer the questions, because the questions will be application-based. Whereas these two topics are theoretical, but there's a lot to memorize. So it's always better that anything which you have to memorize, you do it towards the end of your preparation, very close to the exam. And that's how this order makes sense as well. So no matter which resource you use, whenever you study audit, this is how the audit would proceed in any organization. And that's the correct order to study audit as well, so that it makes sense. Because if you study these two topics before studying the other topics, you don't know what substantive procedures you did to arrive at the opinion. You don't know why the report is structured, right? You don't know what reasonable assurance is. You don't know what audit evidence is. So we'll study it in the same order, such that by the time we arrive at the audit reports, we know everything else and how we have arrived at that opinion and at that report. So this is basically the responsibilities which applies to us. We plan the audit, we perform the audit, and then we report on the audit. These are the stages. Are we clear with that? Any questions on this? So the two expectations are set straight right at the beginning of the session itself, specifically for audit. All the questions are theoretical. right? And the challenge with the theoretical question is you pick the answer from the options. You read the options, eliminate 3 and select 1. Now, the wrong options can confuse you and make you select a wrong answer. So therefore, to avoid that, make sure your conceptual clarity is there. You can read the question. And that's why we'll practice a lot of the questions in the class itself so that you can see how we are eliminating, how we read each and every word, right? At the same time, right, we'll follow the order of preparation, which has been given in the sparring sessions, because that's how it logically an audit will proceed in the organization. Now, the topic which we have for today, the first topic is professional responsibilities. We'll understand the professional responsibilities an auditor must comply with. Now, of course, let us say you're a CPA, you are working in an audit firm, right? Now, before you can take on an engagement, there are certain rules, regulations, standards, and codes of conduct which you must comply with. Let's understand what are the different standards which apply to different types of engagement. Now, if you're doing an audit for a non-issuer, right? Of course, that audit, that engagement is conducted as per GAS, generally accepted auditing standards, which is issued by AICPA. But that is the standard based on which you'll perform the audit. So the performance of the audit will be done as per these rules. But as an auditor, you personally must comply with AICPA code of conduct in this engagement of audit of non-issuers. So if you're doing an audit of non-issuers, the audit will be done as per GAS, which has been issued by AICPA. But as an auditor, you must comply with the code of conduct, the AICPA code of conduct. That is something which you need to comply with. AICPA code of professional conduct. That's what you need to comply with on a personal level. You must follow all the rules. So this code of conduct applies to the auditor. The GAS applies to the audit engagement. If you're doing an audit of issuers, the engagement is done as per PCOB auditing standards and GAS. GAS is basically what you have for non-issuers. And you also use along with that PCOB auditing standards. And as an auditor, you must comply with AICPA code of conduct, SEC rules, and Sarbanes-Oxley Act rules as well. If you're doing an audit of an international company, right, the audit will be done as per ISA, International Standards on Auditing, and you would comply with IESBA code of conduct. If you're doing an audit of a governmental entity, right, of course, you will comply with generally accepted governmental auditing standards, which we also call GAGAS, which we also refer to as GAGAS. And of course, to do this audit, we'll also comply with AICPA code of professional conduct. In all of these engagements, you have to comply with AICPA code of professional conduct. Right? If you're doing an attestation engagement, you're doing it as per SSAEs, right? The engagement is done as per statement on standards for attestation engagements. But as an auditor, as an accountant, you'll follow AICPA code of professional conduct. It is an attest service. If you're doing an accounting and review service, you're doing it as per statement on standards on accounting and review services. But you would also comply as an auditor with AICPA or as an accountant with AICPA code of professional conduct. So the engagement will be performed as per these rules. But as an individual, you must comply with AICPA code of professional conduct. That's the standard you adhere to at an individual level. Now, again, the first point I've made here is, now we'll discuss this, right? When we discuss audit of non-issuers here, the engagement itself is done as per GAS. But as an auditor, right? As an auditor, you must comply with AICPA code of professional conduct. If you talk about audit of issuers, which we'll discuss here, the engagement is done as per PCOB auditing standards and again GAS. But as an auditor, you must comply with AICPA code of conduct and some other rules which we'll be discussing in this topic itself. If you're doing a governmental audit, if you're doing an audit of a governmental organization, you will do it as per GAGAS. But as an auditor, you must comply with AICPA code of professional conduct. If you're doing an attestation engagement, the engagement will be done as per SSAE. But as an auditor or as an attestator or as an accountant, you must comply with AICPA code of conduct. If you're doing an accounting and review service, which we'll discuss here, the engagement will be done as per SSARS, but you must comply with this. So this is the code of standards, right? What is AICPA code of professional conduct? It's basically the code of standards which says that you have to comply with these rules. And this basically makes a distinguish. See, think about it. As an auditor, we have a responsibility towards the public. We are protecting the public interest, right? So if we have the highest standard of professional conduct, right, it says we are taking a high degree of responsibility towards the public. So the AICPA recognizes that a distinguishing mark of a profession is that we are taking a high degree of responsibility towards public. That, okay, hey, whatever we have to do it, we are doing it for the public itself. Now, this conduct says, right, that we have an honorable behavior. We have a commitment towards honorable behavior, even if it comes at a cost of personal sacrifice. We will not look at our personal interest. We'll again uphold public interest over and above the personal interest. Now, all the professional services which will be performing, AICPA Code of Professional Conduct would apply for sure. Now, of course, we are all members of AICPA, right? Now, AICPA has broken down this entire code of conduct. All of the code of conduct will not apply to all the members. Some code of conduct will apply to some members. Some rules will not apply to other members. Some will apply to some members. So AICPA has broken down 3 categories of members. So you have part 1. So you have part 1 again. This applies for members in public practice. This applies for members, or this applies for members of AICPA who are working for accounting firms, who are working as auditors, who will perform audit services, who will perform review services, who will perform attestation services, who will perform all of these services. So part 1 applies. Part 1 of the AICPA Code of Conduct applies to only members in public practice. Part 0 is principles, which everybody must follow. Everybody must follow. Part 2 of AICPA Code of Conduct is applied for members in business. So for example, let's just say I'm a member of AICPA, but I'm not in public practice. I'm not performing audit services. I'm not performing accounting services. I'm not performing, let's just say, review services. So I'm a member in business. Part 3 applies to all other members. So for example, even students come under Part 3. So if you are registered to write the AICPA exams, you become a Part 3 member. You become a Part 3 member. So AICPA says, okay, these are the different types of members. This is the code of conduct, right? Now it has Part 0, which applies to everyone. Everyone must follow it. We have Part 1, which applies to members in public practice itself. Now, I have made a list here of which rules applies to which types of members. Part 2 is for members in business. Part 3 is for all the members. So Part 0 applies to all the members. Part 1, who are members in public practice, they must follow these rules. Integrity and objectivity, everybody must follow. Whether you're a member in public practice or business or other member, you must all follow this. You must all follow this. Now, professional competence and due professional care, when you do and we'll discuss these rules, that must be followed by members in public practice and members in business. Other members need not follow this because you're not providing any service. You're still students. Confidentiality is something which is expected of members in public practice only. Contingent fees is acceptable or something which members in public practice must follow. There are some restrictions that you cannot take contingent fees. There are certain acts which are discreditable to the profession. Now, this is something which everybody must follow and again refrain from doing. The rules regarding advertising and solicitation and referral fees again applies to members in public practice. So if you see, members in public practice have the highest degree of AICPA Code of Professional Conduct being applied to them. And the reason for that is very simple. These are the ones who are serving the public. Members in business, they are serving themselves. They're working for themselves. But members in public practice, they are there to protect the public interest. They are here to protect that, okay, hey, we are doing the audit to make sure to tell the public whether the financial statements are true and fair or not. So the most number of rules and regulations or the most number of principles would apply to them. So are we clear with what AICPA Code of Conduct is? Any questions on this? Make sure you're 100% conceptually clear before we move on to the next topic. So this shows you, this topic shows you what we've just discussed. What is the structure of the code of conduct? How is the code of conduct laid out? That's what this shows you right now. So again, every member, right, of the AICPA must comply with AICPA Code of Professional Conduct. So if you're doing any of these engagements, right, be it for non-issuers, audit of issuers, attestation engagement, review engagement, governmental audit, you have to comply with AICPA Code of Conduct. Right? That's a professional responsibility which we must comply with. And we are talking about different professional responsibilities which applies to us. Now, the question here is, right, how is the AICPA Code of Conduct? We'll study this in detail over the next 2 sessions. Let's understand how it is structured. So first of all, this code of conduct is there because it tells us that, okay, we must comply with the highest degree of responsibility to the public. We have to again uphold public interest over personal interest. It has been divided into 4 parts. Part 0 is rules which apply to everyone. Part 1 contains rules which applies to members in public practice only. These are the auditors, right? Or the ones who perform attestation or ARS services. Part 2 applies for members in business. There could be a CPA who is not practicing anymore, who is in a business. So for example, I would be a CPA who is a member in business. I would be a Part 2 member. Part 3 applies to everybody else, including students. Now, here is a quick summary which I've laid out, basically which rules apply to which members. Now, what we'll do is we'll study these rules in detail. So, and this is something which I want you to understand. Now, and this is where we have removed the redundancy in studying as well. Now, integrity and objectivity applies to all the 3 parts, all the 3 types of members. Now, instead of studying the AICPA Code of Conduct as Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, what we'll do is we'll study it from the rule perspective, from the principle perspective. So we'll first study integrity and objective. And we know it applies to all 3 members. Then we will study independence. I think I missed independence here. Then we will study, let's just say, independence. Now, independence as a rule applies only to members in public practice. Then we'll study independence. Then we will study professional competence and due care. So this is the order we will take when we are starting this topic. So instead of studying as Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, right? And then there's a redundancy where we study integrity and objectivity 3 times. We'll study integrity and objectivity and see which members it applies to. Then we'll study independence and see which members it applies to. That's how we will proceed. Now, before we proceed further, there are a few terms which we need to know. Now, again, acceptable level. Now, basically the idea is, right, these are the rules which we must comply with. Now, we must bring down the threat that somebody who sees the engagement says that, okay, hey, has been brought down to an acceptable level that our compliance with these rules is not compromised. Again, I'll repeat it. There is always a risk that we haven't complied with these rules. Now, we must bring down the threat that we have not complied with these rules to an acceptably low level. That, okay, hey, we have complied with these rules. So you must do all the activities, you must have all the controls in place to ensure that we have complied with this rule and the threat that we have not is brought down to a low level. Now, a member, right? Now, member is basically who is registered with AICPA. Now, member could be in public practice, right? It could be a member in business or it could be other members which we have discussed. Now, threat is something which basically, reduces our compliance with these rules, which compromises our compliance with these rules. Now, to make sure those threats are reduced to an acceptable level, we need to have safeguards or controls in place. These are the few definitions you must know. AICPA or exams will not test you on these definitions directly, but I hope you know what these definitions are. Now, the first part of AICPA Code of Professional Conduct is Part 0. Part 0. Now, Part 0 is something which everybody must comply with. Everybody would comply with, right? So this is basically an obligation of self-discipline. This is something which everybody must follow. Everybody must follow, right? This applies to all members. Members 1, 2, 3. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 members. We'll quickly go through it. Now, these are basic moral terms. I'm sure you all understand by reading it. but we'll quickly walk through it. There's nothing to be memorized here. Don't memorize this. So first one is the responsibility principle, right? Basically, we will be responsible in carrying out our duties, in carrying out our responsibility as a professional, right? Whatever responsibilities we have, we will exercise sensitive, professional, and moral judgment. We should exercise sensitive, professional, and moral judgment in carrying out our responsibilities. We also have a responsibility to cooperate with each other to improve the art of accounting, maintaining public confidence, and carrying out the responsibility of self-governance. So basically, the responsibility principle states we will be responsible in carrying out our duties, right? And we will exercise sensitive, professional, and moral judgment. No need to memorize this. And at the same time, what we'll do is, right, we will constantly cooperate with each other to improve the art of accounting and auditing and make sure there's a public confidence in the work we are doing, and also make sure we govern ourselves to make sure we're doing it properly. The second is a public interest principle. Now, again, we should work in such a way that will serve the public interest. We should work in such a way that will serve the public interest, honor the public trust, and demonstrate a commitment to professionalism. We don't work for ourselves, we are working for the public, right? And therefore, we have a duty to discharge a responsibility with integrity, objectivity, due professional care, and genuine interest in serving the public. That's the idea. Now, when we say public here, we mean clients, lenders, governments, employers, investors, financial community, and everybody else at large. Now, there is also an integrity principle. Now, basically what it says is we should do all our work with integrity. This should not be against any surprise. So basically, we'll be honest and candid, and again, within confidentiality, not break confidentiality by being honest and candid, right? We will also observe objectivity and independence and due professional care. So integrity says not only will comply with it in form, but also in spirit. Will not comply with the rules in form, but also in spirit. Objectivity is also required. Objectivity means that, again, we'll be free from conflict of interest and bias. Free from conflict of interest and bias. Now, we should be impartial and intellectually honest and free from conflict of interest. That's what objectivity states. Now, independence. Now, independence is a rule which is required only for audit and attest services. This is, again, something which you've made clear here. Independence is not for all the 4 members, is only for members in public practice. So, independence applies only to part 1 members, only for part 1 members. That is members in public practice. And we'll discuss independence in detail. One of the most important rules is auditor's independence here. Now, we must be independent in fact and in appearance. We cannot subordinate our judgment to anything else, right? Now, even if the independence is not actually impaired, but there is an appearance that independence is impaired, public confidence would go away from us.